My name is Edmund Haakonson. I am in my second year of teaching at the University of Alberta. My focus is on the human figure as a subject, and that's been true my entire life. It was true when I was a teenager, and it really solidified when I was doing the BFA program at the U of A, now more than 30 years ago. And it's the human figure as a subject just became something that I absolutely fell in love with, and that's never changed. If anything, it's just become stronger for me. And my medium of choice when I'm sculpting is clay for the most part. I have done some work in bronze, which I absolutely love, but there's a cost issue there. So clay has really become my medium of choice for a number of reasons. The two top ones are clay is incredibly forgiving as a medium, which means that I can do things, make mistakes, repair those mistakes, really do things with clay that other mediums don't necessarily allow. And I think the bigger attachment for me is the fact that I grew up on a farm. I come from a rural background, and my attachment to clay really goes back to my youth and my attachment to soil and the land. So the two for me are really very much connected, and there's a romantic association for me with clay, in that it's a type of soil. It's a specialized type of soil, but the things that you can do with it are still, to me, remarkable. And then when one gets into the firing aspect of clay, where it goes from being literally dry dirt to stone, that process, even though I understand all of it, the mechanics of it, the physics and the chemistry and all of those things, there's something that's still really magic in that process for me. So I still have a wonder, a sense of wonder about the medium.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting and really well articulated as well. And like just hearing you talk about it like makes me really excited about clay. Um,
Excellent.
and I mean, I guess I'll introduce myself as well. My name's Hannah. I'm in my third year of university, and right now I'm studying printmaking and sculpture. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Uh, yeah. All right. So this discussion will mainly be about the BFA program and in particular sculpture. And I guess we'll just address any questions that newcomers into the program or might have, or just general questions about the program.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just getting a random call on my phone. So what is figurative sculpture and why have, oh, I guess we have kind of already gone over that, but I guess we can just talk generally about like figurative sculpture and why the body in particular is such a good medium to use clay with.
Okay. So my approach to figurative sculpture is, okay, I'm going to use the word traditional. It's more traditional, or has a traditional basis. I'm a little cautious about using the word traditional because it has, in many art circles, a very negative connotation these days. So it's become a bit of a loaded word. However, in my practice, I am focused on using the human body as a medium of communication for telling human stories. Now, so that has sort of a very specific focus to it. But it's not the only way to go about figurative sculpture. And especially in today's world, there's a much broader scope in terms of what constitutes figurative sculpture nowadays. And my approach to the class that I teach is to give a grounding in anatomy, a grounding in some media, different materials as media, clay in particular, which is the one I have the most knowledge about. But there are other media that are introduced in my class, so that students have an ability to develop a basis on which they can then start exploring on their own, and sort of find the paths that they will ultimately take in their own careers, once they're out of the program and practicing artists. So my intent is to really give people a solid understanding of some basic things, as well as a little bit of history, because it helps to know where a person is coming from, so that there's something there to build a career on. Because I don't believe that people are instantly an artist because they've got a degree and they've left the university. But I do very much believe that students should, the purpose for being a student is to learn the skills and give a foundation so that you can become an artist.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. And just generally from taking your class as well, I've learned so much about the human body that I don't know, I think you can't really get it so much as working on a 2D kind of surface, like with painting. I feel like sculpture really is good for learning about the human body and understanding how it works. So if that's an interest for anyone, I'd say it's a good course to take.
Oh, excellent. And my hope is that it's well, not so much a hope, but I do know that in terms of especially the anatomy, what I'm teaching in my class is also transferable to other disciplines. So the knowledge is helpful even for like people that are painting and drawing, and if a person is using the human figure in printmaking, that anatomy knowledge is entirely transferable to other disciplines. So it's not the sort of thing that I think is just sort of restricted to sculpture, or can only be used in sculpture.
Oh yeah,
It certainly can be transferred.
Yeah, and I think like talking to people that have taken the class as well, like they found like they've just learned so much about how human anatomy works, and where I was kind of before taking it, I was a little bit still confused, but I think actually just working with your hands, if that's of interest to people, I'd say, yeah, good route to take as well. What can students expect entering the sculpture program, and what are the different mediums and options that you can take like in sculpture? Like how far can you take it basically is the next question.
Okay, so sculpture has two sort of streams at the University of Alberta. There's the figurative sculpture, and then there's the abstract sculpture. So I'll just touch briefly on the abstract because that's not my forte. But students will start out in exploring concepts and ideas with abstract sculpture using mostly wood. I know that they can sort of venture into other materials, but it's mostly wood. And then sort of as one progresses through the program, more senior students are able to mostly go into steel abstract sculpture, which is where the focus at the University of Alberta is. In terms of the figurative sculpture, my class is, as I've said, a more traditional type of approach to figurative sculpture. There's a focus on anatomy, there's a focus on materials, clay in particular. And then there's also other instructors that have a more conceptual approach to figurative sculpture. So they have a different approach to how they teach figurative sculpture, and their class is a much more broad approach. In terms of media, clay is a big part of my class. Again, because it's an inexpensive material, it's very versatile. So it's a large number of the projects involve using clay because it's available for students to use and it's affordable. There's also a project in wire in my class, and a casting project that involves using plaster.
Mhm.
And then sort of further along towards the end of the class, um, projects that involve students are more free to use things like papier mâché or Sculpey, which is a polymer clay, um, materials like that to give a little bit more exploration of materials while still expanding knowledge of anatomy and the human form.
Yeah, so quite the variety of tools to use.
Yes.
But mainly clay. So, and I mean, like, what drew me to the class was the clay option and just working with your hands and being able to, like you said, easily fix mistakes. And it's just
Yeah.
a very malleable substance that you said today you can work with till it's basically rock. So I think
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
And the sculpture program is it's a bit unique in that it's a combined class.
Mhm.
So it's a 300 level class, it's a 400 level class, and it's a 500 level class all at the same time. So which is the way that it's always been offered, to the best of my knowledge. It was that way when I did the program. So it can feel a little bit sort of chaotic and disjointed at times, but it's also, I think, an enormous opportunity and advantage, especially for 300 level students who are being introduced to sculpture. So that the 300 level is a more narrow and more restricted in terms of material and freedom of what you get to do. Then the 400 level has more freedom um, to explore on their own. And then 500 level has the greatest level of freedom to explore on their own in terms of subject and media and approach to what they are doing in figurative sculpture and how they're interpreting figurative sculpture. So as a person progresses through the program, there's a greater amount of freedom in media and interpretation. What the advantage is for 300 level students in particular is because everyone's working in the same space, 300 level students get to see what 500 level students are doing as they're doing it.
Mhm.
So there's an opportunity there to learn not only from an instructor, but also be exposed to some different ideas, different media, and other things from other students in sort of more advanced years.
Thank you for taking the time to go through this interview with me. Really
Oh,
appreciate
you're
it.
very welcome.